Hello everyone and welcome to another video on JavaScript programming. Kaushal this side from SimpliCode, and today we are going to discuss character sets and ranges in JavaScript. You guys might wonder why we are discussing all this, but after going through this particular video, you'll get an idea about why regular expressions are used in JavaScript. So before we begin, make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel and press that bell icon to never miss an update from SimpliCode. So without any further delay, let's get started. We came across meta characters in Regex in the previous video, where we saw how to check the availability of a particular word or expression within a string. We know about functions as well. So today we will combine all these things to some extent, and we'll see how basic validation actually works in JavaScript. We'll see an example wherein we'll go through the character sets and ranges and check for some specific type of validation in this video. Now, the topic character sets and ranges itself is a pretty explanatory topic, and we can get an idea of what's coming just by going through the words. Characters in layman term refers to alphabets and numbers, right? We see a character on a daily basis and we know a lot about them. Now, if I write here A, we can say that this is a character in JavaScript. Now, we can use one single character or a group of characters at a time with regular expressions in JavaScript. We have a particular syntax for it. We'll go through the syntax first, and the syntax is like we have to use square brackets and we have to write characters in between these brackets or inside these brackets. Here we have three characters A, B and C. What we can do is we can give instructions to the system to use any one of them in a regular expression. So let's take a small example of how this actually works with regular expressions. And what we'll do is we'll do the same thing we have been doing till now. We'll search a word within a string. We'll check that if a word exists within a string or not. So we'll do it like we'll take a variable regex that will contain the regular expression. So this is the syntax for regular expression, and this is our regular expression which says DEF. So in actual this is not a word, but assume it as a word for now. And what we have to do is we have to include character sets with this regular expression, right? So we'll write here inside square brackets ABC. Now the next thing is we'll define the string. Let's say the string name is tr1 and the string says this string contains ADEF. So DEF, or we can say ADEF, is what matters the most for now. So anything else you can write on the string. The next thing we are going to do is we are going to use the test function to check if this particular regular expression is available in the string or not. So we'll write here regex.test, and inside this we'll pass the string as a parameter. Now the last thing we'll do is we'll write here console.log and we'll print this on our console. Fine. We are done with it. So what we are doing here is we want to search the string for a word which contains the letter DEF compulsory. But before DEF, we can have a character. That character can either be A, B or C. No other character will be taken in front of DEF because we have defined a character set as well, right? And that character set contains only three characters A, B and C. So here you can see we have ADEF present in the string and we have A along with DEF. So what we are expecting is this test function should return true, right? So save it and check for the output in the console. So we'll go to our console. And here you can see the output says true because we have ADEF only. Now, if we write here anything else, like if we replace this A with the character R, save it, and you can see the output is false because R is not present inside this character set. Now, what if we write here something like, let's say we are writing here Kaushal DEF. Now, this will check for this letter only, for this L only. Other letters don't actually matters in this case. In the case of character sets, the only character that matters is the character right before the regular expression. So if we save it, you can see the output is changed to false. And if we write here, let's say Kaushal ADEF, save it, and you can see the output is true because it checks for this character only. Fine. Talking about ranges, let's say we want to add any character in the string between A to Z. Now we have two options to do so. First one is we can write A, B, C till Z here, like we'll write here D, E, F, G, H, I and so on and so forth till Z. But this task is a little bit lengthy, right? And we have to spend a lot of time in that process. So the alternate to this process is to define a range of characters. To define a range of characters, it's quite an easy task. All you have to do is write A hyphen Z. So this is how you can define a range of characters. Now this range will consist every character from A till Z. A and Z will also be included. Keep this thing in mind. If we write here Kaushal DEF again, so we have seen in the previous example that it returned false for this, right? Save it now and you can see the output is still true. That's because now we have a range from A till Z. If we write here 5 now it will return false because 5 does not lies in between this range, in between A to Z. So it will return true for any character between A till Z. Fine. Now let's say we want to exclude some particular characters from this range, like we don't want the user to include D, E, F again, no character from D, E or F. So the syntax for that is also pretty easy. We have to use the caret operator and we have to write here but we don't want to include. So let's say in this case we don't want to include D, E, F. Fine. So if we write here D, D, E, F now and save it, you can see it will return false because we have included D, D, E, F. And if we write here A, D, E, F, save it and you can see the output is true. Now we can't include characters D, E and F in front of this regular expression because we have defined this character set to not include these characters in the regular expression. So these are characters and ranges in regular expressions. So the next thing we'll be doing is we'll be going through a basic validation example and we'll see how actually basic validation works in JavaScript. What we'll do is we'll create a small HTML form that will take the employee ID from the user and it will check if the employee belongs to the organization or not. So let's say the employee ID of the organization has some unique characters present in it and the character remains there in each employee ID. The idea is simple. We'll take the ID from the user and we'll use the if-else control statement to check if it belongs to the organization or not. So let's move on to the HTML file and we'll create a placeholder and a button. So let's do it. We'll write here form and inside this form tag let input ID is equals to EID and placeholder is equals to employee ID and type is equals to text. Fine. The next thing we are going to do is we are going to include a button as well, and we are going to call a function on clicking. So we'll use the on click event. So we'll write here on click and let's say the function name is employee and the button name is, let's say, submit. Save it and you can see over the browser that we have a placeholder along with the button. So let me give a space here, save it now and you can see we have a placeholder and a button. So that's all what we have to do in HTML part. Now the rest of the thing we'll be doing in the JavaScript file. So let's move to a JavaScript file and comment this piece of code first. Now what we want is we want to call a function employee on clicking the submit button. Fine. So what we'll do is we'll define a function employee and inside the body of this function the first thing we will be doing is we'll be taking the user's ID, right? So we need a variable for that. So let's say the variable is empid and we'll write here document dot get element by ID. The ID is EID dot value. Fine. Now this empid variable will hold the value entered by the user, right? So like if we write here something like D2386, so let's say this is the ID, this will be stored, the value for this ID will be stored inside this empid variable. Fine. Now we'll use the regular expression to check for some special characters. So we'll write here inside the function, we'll write here where check is equals to, inside the regular expression we'll write something. So let's say we want to start the employee ID for the development team with the alphabets D and E, and each ID will have a similar numeric code like 253, which represents the code for a particular team. Fine. So we'll write here inside the character sets, we want DE to be there before a similar numeric code, right? So 253 is the numeric code and we want to include either D or E before that, right? And after 253, let's say we have a range of numbers that each employee ID has a unique 2-digit number. The ID should look like either D25311 or either E25361, something like that, right? Now, so for that what we have to do is we have to include here another range, and this range will be from 10 till 99. Fine. This looks a bit complex now, but if you try to do it by yourself, believe me guys, you'll find it out that this is an easy task but a little lengthy, we can say. Now the next part is we have to validate the ID entered. For that we have to use the if-else control statement along with the test function. So we have to write here if check dot test, and inside this we'll write emp ID, because emp ID is the variable which is holding the value entered by the user, right? So if it's true, then it will return an alert box with the message that says valid employee ID. Fine. Else it will return a message in the pop-up which will say invalid ID. Fine. So this if-else statement will check the value returned by the test function. If the value returned is true, it will return a message valid employee ID. Otherwise the else statement will run and the user will get a pop-up with the message invalid email ID. Fine. Let's check the output, and in the browser here we'll write the employee ID in the given placeholder. So let's say the employee ID is D25319. Submit it and you can see it says valid employee ID. We can do it for some more, like if we write here E25398. Submit it and you can see it still says valid employee ID. Now what if we want to include any character between this range and the unique number, right? So let's try to do it. We'll write here D253K89. Fine. So let's say this is the ID we want to enter. Submit it and you can see it says invalid employee ID. Fine. Now one more thing we want to do here is, like if we write here D253 89, in this case it will return false or invalid employee ID. Why? Because we haven't included any modifier here and it will differentiate between uppercase and lowercase character. So to overcome this problem, what we can do is we can include the in case sensitive modifier and we are clearly good to go. Now if we write here D25398 and save it, if we write here now D25398, submit it and you can see here the output says valid employee ID. So this is how we can use validation along with regular expressions. We'll go through a particular video on validation in JavaScript after we complete this regular expressions topic. Until then, I want you guys to do it and I want you to make some changes in the program and tell us in the comment section about how to use modifiers with characters and ranges in JavaScript or regular expressions. So that's all for this video guys. See you in the next one where we will go through shorthand character class. If you liked this video, do give it a thumbs up. If you have any doubts, do let us know in the comments below. Share it with your friends and don't forget to subscribe SimpliCode. Thank you.